Today I'm going to prepare sauteed garlic and Parmesan asparagus. I'm going to start this process with blanching. Blanching vegetables is a great way to partially cook vegetables. This is going to retain the flavor, the texture, the color, and the nutrients in some of these vegetables. It's also a great way in order to prepare foods in a restaurant. Often early in the day, vegetables may be blanched and then drained and refrigerated, and then they're finished very quickly for service later on. So what I have started out with is a pot full of hot boiling water. And I filled this pot completely full, or 2/3, 3/4 full, with boiling water. I want to salt that water before I blanch my vegetables. Anne Burrell says your boiling water for blanching should be taste like the sea. I'm not going to go to that extreme, but I am going to add a good tablespoon of kosher salt into my boiling water. And I want to leave this at a high temperature so it keeps a rolling boil. And I'll stir that just a little bit to dissolve my salt. Okay, in order to prepare my asparagus, I need to cut the ends off. The bottom end of a stalk of asparagus is very woody. And the way that you can tell where to do that is just do this and bend it. It will naturally break where that woody end begins. And you can just throw that in the discard pile. For the purpose of having a neater appearance for service in a restaurant, I would suggest that you don't break those ends, but you chop those ends off. So again, I'm just going to lay these here that I had snapped off to see where that is, to get the approximate point where I need to cut off the ends of my asparagus. You want to make sure that you wash that asparagus and sort through it. Once in a while you'll have a piece that is not in very good shape. The bottom end can be a little bit stocky, but sometimes you don't get the flowering end on that, or I had a few pieces here that were just very wilted. So I took care of that as I was washing my asparagus earlier on. Okay, the blanching process is fairly quick. It's only 1 to 2 minutes for asparagus. And you want to make sure that if you have a smaller sphere of asparagus, that you are going to do that for a shorter period of time. It takes less cooking time for the smaller spheres. I think that I can get all of these in here at once, so I'm going to go ahead and drop these into my boiling salted water, and I'm going to time this for about 1 to 2 minutes. While that is happening, I'm going to set aside my cutting board, my discard bowl, and I'm going to bring in my bowl of ice water. When the blanching process is done, what we want to do is immediately submerge this in a large bowl of ice water. That will stop the cooking process very, very rapidly. So I have this bowl completely filled with probably 4 cups of ice and the rest of that filled with water. So it's very cold to touch. I'm just going to give this asparagus a quick stir. We've had about a minute here. I'll go just a short time more, and then I'm going to go ahead and remove this. I would err on the side of taking it out earlier rather than later. I like vegetables that have a little bit of texture to them. I don't want them, if I hold up that piece of asparagus, I want it to have its shape still. I don't want it limp. So I think I am ready to go ahead and take these out. So with my tongs here, I'm going to remove this to my ice water and submerge that into the ice water. You could also use a slotted spoon. I just find that tongs are very easy to work with here. If you have a large batch, you would want to do this in smaller batches so you don't overcrowd your bowl and your pan. Now, the process of shocking this and stopping the cooking process takes about the same time as the cooking process itself. So I'll leave this in here for a good 2 minutes and making sure again that those are moving around a little bit in that ice water. And immediately when I added that asparagus, you could see that it was hot and more of the ice melted, and I can feel the difference in the bowl already. So we're going to allow that to cool down. The next thing I'm going to do is transfer that to a pan that I've lined with paper towels here. Actually, I lined them with napkins because I did not have paper towels in hand. If you want, you can also salt this ice water. I didn't think it was necessary to do that. The salted water will give it a little bit of that flavor and taste and bring out the natural flavors of the asparagus itself. And we will add more flavor when we saute this. Blanching is a process that you might use for other reasons other than sauteing vegetables. If you're roasting vegetables, especially when you have vegetables that take different periods of time in cooking, and you want to partially cook some of those vegetables, you could blanch those first, and then that's going to cut down on the roasting time. If you are working with tomatoes and you want to remove the skin of those tomatoes, you're making salsa or you're making spaghetti sauce, blanching those for a couple minutes in that boiling water, submerging them into your ice water bath will immediately have that skin start peeling off of your tomato. Blanching also might be used if you are going to freeze some of those vegetables to partially cook those before. And again, the benefits of blanching is that it's going to retain the color, the texture, the flavor of those vegetables, as well as the nutrients in them. Okay, my asparagus should have had plenty of time to cool now, and you can feel to the touch that they are nice and cool. So I will spread those out on my paper towels here. You want to make sure that before you go to the sauteing process that you do make sure that there's no water left on your vegetable. Of course, water with a hot skillet and oil will splatter, so you want to make sure that those are drained very well. You can also take additional paper towels, or in this case, napkins, and blot some of the top of those. So I am going to pause the video and I will set up for the sauteing process and then demonstrate that next. All right, we're going to finish these vegetables by sauteing them. What I've done is I've warmed up my saute pan over medium heat, and it's warm now, so I'm going to add in about a half a tablespoon of olive oil to this. To that, I'm going to go ahead and add some of my asparagus. I may do this in batches because I don't want to overcrowd my skillet. You can hear that good sizzle knowing that your vegetables are cooking. What I'm doing is constantly moving these vegetables as they are going through that cooking process. These spears of asparagus, remember, are not very thick, so they won't take much time in which to cook. To add some flavor to that, I am going to add a little bit of minced garlic. I like to add it at this point in time rather than at the beginning because garlic will burn so easily. So you have to make sure that you are moving this around. And the whole process itself, again, will take minimal time. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and remove that batch. It is done. Once again, you can hold up your spear of asparagus and see if it is still firm. What we're just doing now is really heating that asparagus rather than having to do the whole cook process, because partial of that cook was done when we did our process of blanching. I'm going to add just a little bit more oil back to the skillet here to do the second batch. Move that around in my pan before adding the remaining stalks of asparagus. And once again, I'm going to move that around to coat it in the oil. I'm going to go ahead and add a little garlic to this as well, and keep that moving as the cooking process occurs. Sauteing is very good because this is the way that we can cook things very quickly. What it's doing is heating through, and it gives us an opportunity to season. There's very many different ways that you can season this. I'm using garlic and Parmesan today. You could also use lemon juice. You could use just simply salt and fresh ground pepper. You could use a variety of herbs. You could use balsamic vinaigrette. There's many different ways that you can season your vegetables. Okay, I think that we are pretty much warmed through. Once again, you can check your asparagus, making sure that it's holding its shape. You want to give it enough cooking time, however. Okay, we experienced a little technical difficulties and my computer froze on me. So as I was saying, at the very end of that cook process, you want to make sure that you cook that long enough that your vegetables are cooked, that are heated through. So I have my garlic and sauteed asparagus here. I have shaves of Parmesan that I'm going to sprinkle on this. And if you can do this immediately when it comes out of the skillet, you will have that melt on. I am using shaves of Parmesan. You could also use grated Parmesan and toss it in there at the very end of that cook process too. Plating is important, so you want to think about the size and shape of your plate. If you were serving this as a side dish, it would go along well on an entree plate. It would be nice to fill this plate a little bit more full, but thinking about plating I think is important as well. So I'll show you the finished product here. See if I can get a picture of that. That is our garlic and Parmesan sauteed asparagus.